Hello, Out Entrepreneurs. Rhodes Perry here, and welcome to episode number 4 of The Out Entrepreneur, a weekly podcast where I get to interview today's most inspiring LGBTQ bosses crushing it in business. Today, I am so thrilled to be interviewing my friend and longtime colleague, M. North. M. North is seriously one of the coolest people I know. She is the owner of M16 Tattoos, a private tattoo studio in Brooklyn, New York City, specializing in original black ink tattoos and serving the LGBT community. I am also one of the proud owners of your tattoos, as you know, so I am a huge fan, and I'm really excited to have you on the show today. So are you ready to inspire fellow out bosses?
Hi, Rhodes. Thank you so much. Of course.
Yeah, all right. So just tell us a little bit more about your business and what makes it unique.
Well, I started tattooing a little over 7 years ago now. I kind of stumbled on it unexpectedly. I was interested in tattooing for a long time, and since we have an apprenticeship model here in New York, I often got turned down. I don't really know why, if it was because I was female presenting or queer or didn't hang out with other tattoo artists. So I didn't ever think it was a possibility. I had gone to art school to Parsons for undergrad, and I studied fine arts. I ended up working as a graphic designer for many years, mostly for nonprofits and social justice organizations. But I was really tired of sitting at a desk. I really wanted to draw more, so I went back to school and got an MFA in art, and it was on my way out that I was offered an apprenticeship and started tattooing. At first, I wasn't sure how serious I was about it. I didn't really want to work in a tattoo shop. It was hard to get in just starting out, probably for the same reasons I had trouble getting an apprenticeship. But eventually, I ended up in tattoo shops for about 2 years on and off. And in between, I was practicing on my own. I noticed that I was mostly tattooing folks from the queer community because they weren't comfortable in tattoo shops themselves. So after my last year-long stint at a tattoo shop, I decided to open my own business, which is a private studio that I just opened in August.
That's amazing, and congratulations on that. I know that that is a big step. And I'm curious, what is the one thing right now that has you most fired up about your business?
I really like that when I want to change things or I want to take steps moving forward, that it's completely up to me. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of times when I've been working for people in the past, like being a creative person, I would just kind of get stuck in a rut because other people were resistant to change, you know, whether because it was power dynamics about moving up or being stuck in ways of doing things. And this even applies to the office jobs that I've worked at, but especially at tattoo shops, there's a lot of competition and there's a lot of resistance to change. So it's been really great running my own space because if I have ideas, then I can implement them right away.
The autonomy and the creative control, especially as an artist, I'm sure is such an advantage of running your own business and being able to go in the creative directions that you want to go in. I want to ask, because I see this a lot for many of the out entrepreneurs that I know, it seems like they arrived at starting their own business for one of two reasons. They either felt a calling to pursue a purpose-driven idea, or they just couldn't stomach the idea of fitting into a workplace culture that didn't quite respect and honor their authentic selves. And I'm curious which one of these paths resonates with you the most.
I think with tattooing, it was mostly working in environments that I personally didn't feel safe in, but I could deal with them, but then also not being able to create the kind of environment I wanted to for my clients. So whether they were queer or they were people of color, you know, there was sexism and homophobia and racism happening around us while I was doing tattoos. And, you know, I wanted to have more control over editing that out of the situation to protect my clients.
Right. And I want to get more specific too. So did being LGBTQ in particular, so when thinking about your sexual orientation or even your gender expression, did that influence your journey to become your own boss in the tattoo industry?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the tattoo industry is much like construction work or other industries that are really male dominated. And there's also a certain acceptance of homophobia. So moving outside of a shop protected me from that.
Right. I want to go even further with this because I think it's helpful for those folks right at the beginning of their journey thinking about starting their own business, of going back to a specific time where you are your own boss. And I know that you've had several jobs where you were working for other people. So in the context of being your own boss, can you share with us one of the most challenging times that relates to being LGBTQ, where you were challenged with bringing your authentic self to work because you were afraid of losing business, or maybe you felt unsafe? And if you could just briefly tell us a little bit more about that moment and be as specific as possible, just to help kind of capture that even in these kind of moments, we can still be resourceful and manage around them and still do good business and be ourselves.
I mean, I think in the tattoo industry, it's more implicated. So there were situations when I was working for shops that were myself and all cis men, and just typical things happening, like people drinking at the shop. So, once the drinking started, then they would start talking about ladies in a very sexist way. So I knew in those situations not to be out with people, and they knew not to ask me either, just for my own safety.
Right. And thank you for sharing that. Obviously a huge challenge. And I imagine, in the industry that you're in, there aren't a lot of LGBTQ business owners running shops. So you definitely have a niche, for sure. And I think that that's something interesting that leads to my next question for you, which is, how are some of the ways that you've leveraged your LGBT identity in the tattoo industry to really start to build a thriving business? I mean, is that an asset for you, and in what ways does that work to your advantage?
I think mostly since I've started working on my own in August, it's something I've been able to do, because even the last shop I was in, which presented themselves as queer friendly, there was a lot of talk about ghettoizing yourself as a woman or a queer person. So there's a lot of resistance to this like activist identity and identity based politics, even in the tattoo world that is more supposedly queer friendly. I think a lot of queer tattoo artists live under the radar and don't claim their identities because they've made it in a really male-dominated world. Since I've been on my own, I've been thinking of ways to slowly speak out and just like state on my webpage that I am queer friendly, that I am POC friendly, that I am body positive, because now I can do that. And I know my clients are going to appreciate it. That's why they've always come to me. But, now I don't have the resistance of working under a shop and working under somebody else's rules. I also have like a sign in my studio that says that racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia won't be tolerated. Nice. Like that kind of thing. Just finding ways to make it more visible and, affirm that for people who are there.
Yeah. And thank you for that example. I was just going to ask you, what are some of the specific ways that you signal that you're holding space for really marginalized communities? And the reason why I'm asking that is because with working with clients in the work that I do in diversity and inclusion work, HR folks, diversity professionals sometimes struggle of how to welcome, LGBT people, people of color, people with disabilities. And so I think that that's one great example. I mean, you had also mentioned your website. So what are some ways that you signal that you're queer friendly, or is that something that you just kind of write explicitly, or are there kind of more subtle ways that you show that there's a welcoming culture within your shop?
So some people, just because of how they hear about me, is because they want a queer tattoo artist. Like, they already know, but I make a point. I have a booking page that people go to request appointments. And I think it's the second sentence on that page says that I am queer friendly, body positive, et cetera, et cetera. So that's right there up front.
And that's something that I'll definitely be sure to include in the show notes so that people know where to find you. And you've shared just a lot of value in both kind of a really challenging moment and creative ways that you leverage your LGBT identity. For our listeners who are just starting their path, can you really focus in on one key takeaway that they can remember as they're getting started with as much, we're kind of in a climate of fear for some LGBT people in this country. So what's one takeaway that you would share with those folks considering to take this leap?
I would say, especially for people starting to tattoo, now that I've been doing it for almost 8 years, I have a lot of people coming to me. There are far too few apprenticeships available, and for anybody. and especially for people who don't fall within the norm of tattoo artists. So, it is kind of the thing, like if you're committed, do it. And what's been helpful for me is just fake it till I make it. I mean, I have many moments of feeling discouraged because I'm running my own business, feeling like I'm not making enough money or this isn't going to work. And that still comes up sometimes. And I feel like I'm in a much better place having a successful business. But, if you can really fake it till you make it and focus on the positives, the clients who are coming to you, focus on the people who support you, and focus less on the negatives, because there are a lot of people in the tattoo world who are very, very competitive and will use your identity against you or say you're not a good tattoo artist. And I mean, also a lot of reading business books and those kind of like cheesy, inspirational business talks and stuff has been really helpful for me.
I agree. And I think you speak to the fake it till you make it, the imposter syndrome, the idea that as you start out, that self-criticism creeps in. And I think one of the themes that you touched on is just kind of stay focused and keep going. And I always think that that's great advice to share. And on a related note, you had said that there's few apprenticeships that prioritize women, prioritize people of color, queer folk, and those people who are at the intersections of all of those identities. So are there ways that your business gives back right now to trying to make more space to have these kind of fellowships? Or are there other ways that you give back to LGBT communities, like through charitable giving or volunteering? I know that you're a small shop, but you still may hire or contract out certain work. So just if you can describe some of those ways that you give back, because I know that you're really engaged in New York.
Well, there's a couple things. For me, it's been, because the tattoo world has been so isolating for the majority of the time I've been in it, like it's been really important for me to reach out to other queer and women tattoo artists. And I started a Facebook group for that, for people to talk, which has been somewhat active. I think a lot of tattoo artists are away from the computer a lot, but, some people really appreciate it. So that's been important, and it's unusual for the tattoo world to have any kind of network group, but most of us are working on our own, so it's good to have. I mean, sometimes I do fundraisers. After the tragedy in Orlando, I did a tattoo fundraiser for that, and I think we raised $2,500 to give to the Orlando One Fund.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and the response was great. I mean, so many people booked these tattoos, because they were looking for some way to heal and give and, also deal with it on a personal level. Right now, I'm just at the point where I'm thinking about contracting out some of my scheduling work. And actually today I just met with somebody who was a past client and, also a member of the queer community to work on some of my scheduling.
And I think that's a great example, for other businesses that are thinking about ways of giving back. Obviously, there's many volunteering opportunities within local communities or afar when, unfortunately, tragedies like Orlando occur, and also through contracting opportunities. Even small one-off type jobs can really help create more economic opportunities for LGBT folks that are local in our communities. So I think that that's great. And I just want to say, you've already shared a ton of really powerful insights. We're going to go to take a quick sponsorship break, but I'm encouraging everyone to stick around because when we return, we're going to have the opportunity to jump in our bonus round and have the opportunity to get to know Em just a little bit better.
HR and diversity professionals. Are you struggling with engaging LGBTQ talent? Do you stay awake at night worrying about limiting litigation risks? Have you considered seeking support around these concerns, but just aren't sure where to turn? Look no further. Rhodes Perry Consulting offers you solutions with the Engaging LGBTQ Talent A to Z certification. This proven 4-week mentorship program delivers skills, offers support, and connects you with other professionals committed to transforming themselves and their workplaces. Learn more about this cutting-edge program by visiting rhodesperry.com. and use the promo code RPC for a 10% discount. Take action and visit rhodesperry.com.
Welcome to the bonus round. This is a time where our listeners have the opportunity to get to know Em just a little bit better, gain some insights on how they can leverage their LGBT identity, and then we can all learn one way to stay in touch with Em after the interview's over. So Em, Did your LGBTQ identity hold you back from taking the entrepreneurial leap, or did it speed up the process for you?
I definitely think it sped up the process for me. I said I was going to wait at least until I was tattooing for 10 years to break out on my own, but because I was in a work situation where I was often very uncomfortable, and even though I'd only been tattooing for 7 years, I've been in the working world for much longer than that, about 17 years. So I think, it definitely sped things up.
Can you talk just a little bit more about the uncomfort that you spoke to? Because one of the reasons why I'm asking that is because in the show, we talk about bringing your authentic self to work 100% of the time. And I'm just curious what that means for you.
When I was in a shop and, I had to edit some of my conversations with clients, and clients had to edit them too. And tattooing is very personal. I'm often working in somebody's body for many hours at a time. People have very vulnerable conversations. So that was part of it. It wasn't allowing us to have the full exchange. And then we would have a lot of guest artists who would just not respect clients' privacy, like come behind privacy screens, or they would say things that were a little bit off color. So things like that were definitely affecting my experience. I found when I spoke up about it in the work environment, then I was just it wasn't taken well. It alienated me more.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
What's one lesson or influence which supports your own personal development and or your professional advancement?
I guess I think a lot about, I come from a very working class background. So I've always worked a lot. And I'm also an artist, so I'm always trying to find ways to make more art. But my addiction to work makes that difficult. So, always remembering that I only live once and reminding myself that. And then, through that, trying to work on eliminating the tasks that make me really miserable, and to do more work that brings me joy is really helpful.
Name one thing that you readily delegate in your business to stay focused on what you're good at.
Well, as I said earlier, I'm starting to delegate emailing, but that's not something I've entirely switched over to yet.
So are you using an automated service, a virtual assistant, or...
I'm using a person. I'm having a person answer my emails because I haven't found a way, because tattooing is so particular and there's such specific time slots and really specific questions that people have. I definitely know that I need to hire a person to do it.
Congratulations on that. I know that that's sometimes hard to let go of of all of the things. And I think it's a great example for people to remember you don't have to do all of the things. Do the things you're good at.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I think I'm good at emails, but I'm finding the less I'm on the computer, the harder it is for me to switch back to that kind of dimension where I'm just looking at the screen. I also work a lot, and tattooing is very hard on my body. So I'm trying to, use the time that I'm not tattooing to move my body, whether it's just like being alive in the world. So I've noticed that emails have started to really rub me the wrong way, and I don't want that to come out in client interactions at all. It's definitely the first task I would think to hire out.
And so when you're hiring out, you're having more free time. In that free time, I know that you're a huge fan of podcasts. I know that you're a big reader, and even thinking about online content. What's one of these kind of mediums that has you inspired to continue being your own boss that you could share with our audience, especially if any of these things are applicable to LGBT bosses in particular?
Well, that show I recommended to you, Being Boss, has been very influential. As far as running my own business. I also, about 2 years ago, I got into this program that Creative Capital and Lower Manhattan Cultural Council run for artists. And it's a 5-day seminar. It's lottery based. That's all artists about the business around art. And they have different presenters, different workshops. So that really was a huge catalyst for me to start thinking about my artwork, which I haven't talked about in this so much, as a career, but I also applied it to my tattoo work, and just like how I can market myself, learning that marketing myself wasn't a bad thing. And even if people aren't in New York City, I know that Creative Capital has a lot of webinars that people can take and a lot of books that they've put out. So that's a great resource for anybody who has internet access.
So Creative Capital, we will have that in the show notes, so remember that. Unfortunately, we're coming towards the end of our interview, so I was hoping that you could share one parting piece of advice or guidance, a motto that might inspire some of our listeners to keep on the path. And also, if you can share one way to stay in touch with you so that we can learn more about all of your great art and hopefully for some people consider getting a really amazing tattoo.
I think it's just a rehash of, you only live once. So whatever it is that's holding you back, whether it's your identity or finances, just keep in mind that you only have one chance at life. And even though we have to work, there's definitely a way to be creative about it, whatever you're doing, and, to keep trying.
I love it. Just do it, right? So Outbosses, thank you for tuning into this week's episode. Please be sure to check out the show notes for highlights from today's conversations. You'll have all of those great resources that Em just shared with us, along with ways to contact her, and consider leaving a review in iTunes. For now, keep on being your authentic selves 100% of the time.